Following tonight, a Pennsylvania house was stormed last night, and in the basement, police found a missing Louisiana girl hidden in a box covered by a sheet. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Devin Bartolotta.
And I'm Sharice Gibson. The 13-year-old vanished earlier this month from her home in Baker. Now she's recovering after a dramatic multi-state rescue.
Whitney Miller has the latest details in this disturbing case.
The search for that missing 13-year-old from Baker, Louisiana came to a shocking end on Thursday night when police in Pittsburgh found her stuffed inside a box in a basement. Investigators say 26-year-old Keyshawn Crumity kept the girl hidden for days inside his Brighton Heights home.
An amount of policemen, SWAT, FBI, U.S. Marshals, up and down the road. And then I saw a girl, which looked like a girl, very small, being pulled out and taken to the right, which was where the ambulance was.
According to police, Crumity met the teen on Snapchat, luring her from Baker to Pennsylvania with promises of safety and adoption. Instead, investigators say he gave her alcohol and edibles, then sexually assaulted her multiple times before police arrived.
You would never think of any so atrocious like that. It's just horrible.
Detectives say Crumity wasn't alone. A woman from Washington, D.C. allegedly traveled with the teen to Pittsburgh, and the three slept in the same basement bed. The U.S. Marshals tracked the girl's path and then tipped off Pittsburgh police Thursday evening.
It makes me happy that they were making that the arrest, between everybody for that. It's scary, though. Just crazy.
Unnerving.
Unnerving, yeah. Yeah, I'm glad they got the guy.
That investigation also led to the arrest of 62-year-old Ronald Smith in Columbus, Georgia. Police say he and another man drove the girl from Louisiana to Georgia and then put her on a bus bound for Pittsburgh.
Welcome to Shocking True Crime. Thanks to all our viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay with us for daily updates on the most shocking true crime stories. Don't forget to subscribe.
A phone buzzes in the dark of a quiet room. A young girl, just 13, types a message, the soft glow of her screen illuminating her anxious face. She's already stepped into a world she doesn't fully understand. To her, it's just another chat, another stranger offering something she's been craving, escape. But what if she's wrong? What if the stranger on the other end of that message has no intention of helping her at all? What happens when a promise of safety leads to the very thing you fear most? On October 30th, 2025, a team of U.S. Marshals, FBI agents, and Pittsburgh police broke down a door in an ordinary suburban neighborhood. Inside, in the basement, a young girl is found locked away in a box, a sheet covering her fragile body. She's been there for days, and the question hanging in the air is one no one thought they'd ever ask: how did she get here? Was she the only one? Or is there something darker lurking behind the screen that lured her in? The story you're about to hear, it's not just about a single victim. It's not just about one person's nightmare. It's about something much bigger. And as the pieces of this puzzle fall into place, it raises the most chilling question of all: who can we trust when the danger is already in our homes? On a chilly October morning in 2025, a team of U.S. Marshals, FBI agents, and Pittsburgh's finest executed a raid that would reveal the unthinkable. A young girl was found inside the basement of a stranger's home, locked inside a box covered by a sheet, held captive for days. They found her there, in the basement, as if hidden away, shut off from the world, trapped in a box that was too small for anyone to imagine a person could endure. Her body barely moved beneath the sheet, her face obscured by the thin fabric. The smell of fear, of desperation, clung to the air like smoke. The silence was deafening. This was not the first sign of trouble. It was the culmination of something much darker. Her nightmare began more than 1,000 miles away. In a town where the quiet streets should have been a haven, where every neighbor knew one another's name, she was already being manipulated, groomed by someone she trusted. Jasmine was the kind of girl who believed in fairy tales, the ones where people are good, where trust wasn't something that could be broken. She had dreams of a better life, dreams that a trusted adult. That's what he called himself. Keyshawn Crumity, 26. He found Jasmine online and knew exactly how to manipulate her. What started as an innocent conversation turned into something far more insidious. He didn't care about her dreams, her future. He only saw an opportunity, a way to exploit her, to use her for his own twisted desires. She thought she was heading toward safety. But she was on a journey to hell. She was supposed to meet someone who would help her, protect her. Instead, she was passed like a package, moved from one predator to the next. She thought she could trust him, after all, she had no reason not to. But as the days passed, the feeling of dread began to settle in. By the time she reached Pittsburgh, it was already too late. But it wasn't just Crumity. He had help. This was part of a larger network, a web of trafficking that stretched across states, exploiting vulnerable children like Jasmine. Each piece of the puzzle had to be found, each connection made. This wasn't just a case of kidnapping, it was a systematic betrayal of a young girl who trusted the wrong people. How did she end up here? What went wrong? And who was responsible for bringing her into this web of horror? What had happened to this young girl? Was she the only one? Or was there something darker lurking behind this whole situation? Jasmine, a bright and promising teenager, had dreams that were as big as her heart. Living in a small town in Louisiana, she had limited opportunities but held hope in her eyes for a better future. Her world was small, her family close-knit, and the future seemed full of possibilities. At 13, she was still just a child, but she carried herself with a quiet maturity that suggested she was eager to step beyond the confines of her small-town life. What she didn't know was that the internet, an open window to the world, could also be the gateway to something far more dangerous. Like many young girls her age, Jasmine had hopes and dreams that reached beyond the walls of her home. She spent her time online, chatting with friends, scrolling through social media, like millions of other teenagers. But it was on one of those platforms, Snapchat, that she met the man who would change the course of her life forever. His name was Keyshawn Crumity. To Jasmine, he was just another friendly face in the digital sea, a 26-year-old man who presented himself as someone who cared. Someone who could offer her something more, something better than what she had. They spoke for months, as she shared her hopes and dreams with him, believing that he understood her desire to break free. Little did she know, Crumity was building a web, one message at a time, to ensnare her. A man who was known to the local authorities, but until now, his true nature was hidden behind an online mask. Crumity wasn't just a manipulative predator, he was a master of psychological manipulation. He studied Jasmine, learned what she needed to hear, what would draw her in. He knew how to make her feel special, how to make her feel wanted, how to gain her trust. But the manipulation didn't end there. Crumity didn't just promise Jasmine a way out, he convinced her that he was her only hope. He isolated her from her family, planting seeds of doubt in her mind. It wasn't long before Jasmine made the decision to leave, to take the chance on what she thought would be a better life. Jasmine's journey started with an innocent desire to escape, to find a way out of a world that seemed too small for her dreams. But she didn't realize that the person she trusted, the person she thought could help her, was the very one who was orchestrating her downfall. What began as a promise for a new life quickly turned into a nightmare, one that would take her far from the safety she knew, and into the hands of a man who intended to use her for his own twisted needs. She thought she was heading toward safety. But what she didn't know was that every mile she traveled was one step closer to a fate she could never have imagined. She was leaving the life she knew behind, only to fall into a trap that would change her forever. Jasmine traveled through 3 states, each step taking her further from the life she knew. Her heart raced as she boarded each bus, hoping she was making the right choice. But little did she know, Crumity was already waiting for her, his grip tightening around her future with each passing hour. Jasmine was unaware of the danger closing in around her. She thought she was heading toward a new beginning. But in the world of online predators, every click, every message, had consequences. She was just another target in a predator's game, but her story, this time, wouldn't end in silence. It would be heard. Jasmine had no idea that every step she took brought her deeper into a world where safety and trust were just illusions. Her journey from Louisiana to Pittsburgh wasn't a solitary one. It was a well-planned route, crafted by traffickers who had no intention of letting her go free. Jasmine's route seemed almost too precise. From Louisiana to Georgia, then Washington, D.C. Each city was just a waypoint, another stop in a well-organized system designed to move her across state lines, undetected. There were no clues, no obvious signs that she was being trafficked. She was just another face in the crowd, a vulnerable child being passed between strangers, her every move monitored, every decision controlled by those who preyed upon her. The breakthrough came not in the physical world, but in the digital one. Law enforcement wasn't relying on the traditional methods of investigation. No, they were following her through the one thing she never left behind, the trail of data. Every message, every post, every online interaction was a clue, and it wasn't long before they realized Jasmine had made it to Pittsburgh. It was a moment of both relief and terror. The authorities had traced Jasmine's movements, following the digital breadcrumbs until they saw her name and location flash on the screen. She was there. She was in Pittsburgh. And the real work, the rescue, was just about to begin. The team scrambled to coordinate the rescue. They had tracked her, but they weren't the only ones aware of her location. The traffickers, those behind the scenes, wouldn't give up their victim easily. They knew Jasmine's value, and they would do everything in their power to keep her hidden, to stop the authorities from finding her. It was a race against time. The longer Jasmine stayed with her captors, the harder it would be to get her out, the more dangerous it would become. But the authorities were closing in. They had her cornered. This was the moment they'd been waiting for. The door was broken. The officers stormed in, and the house was swarmed with law enforcement. But what they found inside that basement was something none of them would ever forget. There she was, Jasmine, trapped in the darkness, in the smallest of spaces. Her body frail, her face a mixture of fear and exhaustion, but her eyes still held a spark of hope. She was free. But the horror she had endured was far from over. Jasmine was safe, but the fight wasn't over. The truth about how she was trafficked, the network that had moved her, the people who helped facilitate her abuse, this story was far from over. This was only the beginning. What Captivity didn't expect was the subtle power of technology. He believed the digital world was his playground, his means of control, his escape from the real world. But what he didn't know was that his prey, Jasmine, was a young girl with dreams of a better life. She didn't see the darkness he'd hidden behind his messages, his promises. She only saw someone who understood her, someone who could offer her the future she'd always wanted. Captivity's text. Hey, Jasmine. I know how tough it is where you're at. I've been there. I can help you get a fresh start. I know a few people who can make things happen. Trust me, I got you. At first, it all seemed so harmless. The words were just words. But they carried weight. Captivity knew what he was doing. He asked the right questions, offered the right reassurances. He wasn't just a stranger on the other side of a screen, he was the answer to Jasmine's dreams. What he didn't say, however, were the true intentions behind his messages. With every word, he was grooming her, building trust, and setting the stage for a future where she would feel like she had no choice but to follow him. Captivity, the phone call. You're not alone, Jasmine. I've got people who'll help you, who will take care of you. They're good people, people you can trust. This is your chance to make something of yourself. All you have to do is come here. Let me help you. Jasmine hesitates for a moment, her voice cracking slightly as she responds. But, how do I know you're telling the truth? You'll know when you get here. Trust me. All you need to do is take the first step, and we'll handle the rest. Don't worry, Jasmine. This is what's best for you. He had already won. Jasmine's uncertainty was natural, but it was soon overshadowed by Captivity's promise of a better life, a life where she wasn't bound by the limitations of her small town, a life where she could belong to something bigger. Slowly but surely, he manipulated her fears and her hopes, turning her doubts into trust. In those moments, Jasmine thought she was taking control of her life. She thought she was escaping the world that had limited her potential. But what she didn't realize was that she was falling into a carefully laid trap. A trap that Captivity had spent months setting up, pulling her in with promises of safety, love, and opportunity. Jasmine's mother. She didn't tell me everything. She said she was just talking to a guy, but I didn't think anything of it. She'd talk about how this man was going to help her, how he was going to take care of her. But I never thought he was a danger. I never thought she'd go. It was hard to believe for her family. Jasmine had always been so trusting, so innocent. The sudden disappearance left her family in turmoil. Her mother's voice cracked with the weight of what she couldn't protect her daughter from. And Jasmine's father, he was beside himself, unable to fathom how his daughter could have been so easily manipulated. Jasmine's journey had begun, but the moment she left her town behind, she became a piece in a larger game. A game that Captivity and his network were playing, with her life as the prize. As the bus rumbled toward Georgia, then Washington, and finally Pittsburgh, the reality of her decision started to sink in. Was she really going to meet a trusted adult who could offer her a better life? Or had she just made the worst decision of her young life? Captivity's house in Pittsburgh looked like any other house on the block. Nothing about it stood out. Nothing about it made it seem like a place of danger. But behind that door, in that basement, Jasmine was about to experience a horror she never could have imagined. It was no longer just a promise of a better life, it was a trap, and she was already inside. Captivity's home was no sanctuary. It was no safe haven. It was a prison built on lies and promises. A prison where Jasmine would be locked away, physically and emotionally, far from the life she had imagined for herself. But for now, she didn't know any better. She was still under the illusion that this was her escape, unaware that she was stepping into the very thing she tried so hard to avoid.
Welcome to Shocking True Crime. Thanks to all our viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay with us for daily updates on the most shocking true crime stories. Don't forget to subscribe.
The clock had been ticking, and every minute was precious. After days of tracking Jasmine's location through her digital footprint, law enforcement was ready to act. The SWAT team, FBI agents, and U.S. Marshals were positioned, ready to break into the home where she was held. The stakes were high, and no one knew exactly what they would find behind that door. Behind that door was Jasmine's prison. She had been trapped in that dark place for days. Each day felt longer than the last. In the silence of her captivity, the only thing louder than her fear was her hope, that someday, someone would find her. The officers didn't need to say a word. Jasmine's condition spoke for itself. She was weak, frightened, and disoriented, but she was alive. In that moment, there was no greater victory for the team. They had found her, against the odds, against the clock, and they had saved her from a fate far darker than any of them could have imagined. The officer. I've been on a lot of raids, but this one felt different. There's no preparing for something like that. When we walked into that basement and saw her there, I think it hit us all at the same time. She was so small, so fragile. You can't imagine what that feels like, seeing a child in that kind of state. But at least we could do something. We could give her a chance to heal, to be safe again. For the officers, the rescue was a bittersweet triumph. Jasmine had been found, but the damage had already been done. The psychological scars of what she had endured would take far longer to heal than the physical ones. The questions remained: how long had she been trapped in that box? How many times had she begged for help? And who else was involved in her torment? As the officers continued to secure the house, they found more evidence, more signs of a scheme that stretched far beyond just this one case. The investigation was only beginning. What started as a rescue mission quickly morphed into something larger, something that would demand the attention of not only the local authorities, but federal investigators as well. Jasmine was free, but her journey to healing was far from over. She had faced unimaginable horror, and now she would need to find a way to face the world again. But for now, she had a chance. And for the officers who had brought her out of that darkness, that was enough. Jasmine had been rescued from the basement, but her true journey was just beginning. What she had endured in Cromity's home was beyond anyone's comprehension. In that moment of freedom, she wasn't just physically safe, she was about to face the most difficult part of her journey, telling her story. He said he could help me. That I could have a better life, a better future. But, it wasn't like that. He kept me locked in the basement. He told me not to tell anyone. I wanted to leave. I wanted to go home. But I didn't know how. It's difficult to understand the pain of someone trapped in such a situation. How does a young girl find the strength to speak of such horrors? How do you begin to put into words the terror, the helplessness, the confusion of being trapped in a place where the only escape seemed impossible? Jasmine's courage, though, was undeniable. Even in the face of her torment, she was speaking, letting the world know what had been done to her. The psychologist. What Jasmine experienced is not just a physical violation, it's a psychological one. Trafficking, especially at such a young age, strips away a child's sense of self-worth, their trust in others, and their ability to feel safe. It's not just the abuse itself, it's the psychological manipulation, the grooming, the isolation. It creates a deep emotional scar, and it can take years, even decades, to begin to heal. Victims often feel trapped in a paradox. They are physically free, but the trauma lingers. Their self-esteem has been shattered. The world they knew, the world they trusted, no longer exists. They carry the weight of their abuser's voice in their head, telling them they are worthless, that no one will believe them. For some, the hardest part is believing they deserve help, that they deserve to heal. Trafficking leaves a lasting imprint on the mind, one that can't be erased with a simple rescue. Jasmine had been manipulated, isolated, and forced into a life of fear and submission. What had been done to her could never be undone, but the journey of healing had already begun. To truly heal, Jasmine would need more than just a physical rescue, she needed hope. She needed the chance to reclaim the parts of herself that had been stolen. I'm scared, but I'm not giving up. I want to go home. I want to be okay again. In that moment, Jasmine showed more courage than anyone could have expected. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was beginning to reclaim her voice. She was beginning to take back control over her life, over her story. But the journey was only starting. Healing wasn't a straight line, and it would take time. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but Jasmine wasn't alone. For the first time in a long while, she had people who cared. She had a team of investigators, psychologists, and support workers who were there to help her rebuild. The road to recovery would not be easy. There would be days when Jasmine would feel overwhelmed by the weight of her trauma, days when she would question if she could ever be whole again. But with the right support, she could learn to heal. She could learn to trust again, to live without the constant weight of fear that had been so deeply ingrained in her. It wouldn't be simple, but it would be possible. For Jasmine, this was the first step towards something new. She was no longer a victim. She was a survivor. And as she slowly began to heal, she found the strength to hold on to the pieces of her old life that still mattered, her dreams, her hope, and the courage to stand up and speak her truth. What started as a case of one young girl, trapped and exploited, turned into a much larger investigation, a nationwide operation that uncovered a network far more complex than anyone had imagined. With Jasmine's rescue came answers, but also questions that led investigators down a dark and twisted road filled with more suspects, more victims, and more predators hiding in plain sight. Once Jasmine had been rescued, the next question became, who else was involved? Was Cromedy acting alone, or was he part of a larger, more organized network of traffickers? Ronald Smith, 62, was one of the men who played a crucial role in moving Jasmine across state lines. It was him who helped transport Jasmine from Louisiana to Georgia. He was the one who had driven her to the bus station, unknowingly setting the stage for her to fall deeper into Crumity's hands. But Smith wasn't the only one involved. There was another figure, a woman who had helped facilitate Jasmine's journey to Washington, D.C. The woman who drove Jasmine to Washington, D.C. was another piece of the puzzle. Authorities are still piecing together her involvement, but it's clear she was a part of the network that enabled Jasmine's abduction and trafficking. Was she an accomplice? Or was she manipulated by Crumity, too? The investigation revealed that the network wasn't just limited to one man or one woman. It was vast, spanning multiple states and involving several individuals. At first, we thought we were just dealing with a single case of trafficking, isolated, if you will. But as we dug deeper, we uncovered more names, more connections. The network was spread across multiple states, and it wasn't just about one girl, it was about many. Victims were being moved like cargo, crossing state lines with no one to stop them. What the investigators uncovered wasn't just a case of kidnapping, it was part of a larger, deeply entrenched system of human trafficking. And that system, like a spider's web, stretched across the country, with dozens of individuals playing their part in exploiting vulnerable people. The trafficking network wasn't just about moving a girl from one place to another. It was about a system of control, manipulation, and exploitation, one that reached further than anyone could have imagined. FBI. We were dealing with something systemic, not an isolated incident. These traffickers had a network in place, people who helped move victims, people who used social media to find their targets. The money flowed through various channels, some legitimate, some not. But at the end of the day, it was all about control. Control over people who were desperate for a better life. As the investigation unfolded, authorities were faced with a harsh truth: human trafficking is not just an occasional crime. It's a multi-layered issue, one that's hard to dismantle. It's a network built on secrecy, on manipulation, and on exploitation. Each trafficker plays a role in a larger system, one that thrives on the vulnerability of others. What started as a case of one young girl turned into a nationwide investigation. And as the puzzle pieces came together, authorities were left with more questions than answers. Who were the other victims? How many more had been trafficked? And just how far did this network stretch? The bigger picture had become clear. This was no longer just about Jasmine. This was about a system that had exploited countless young people, a network that had moved them across state lines, taking them from one city to the next without anyone noticing. It was bigger than anyone had realized, and it was going to take everything the investigators had to bring it down. Keyshawn Crumity's actions had far-reaching consequences. What began as a quiet manipulation through the screens of a smartphone had culminated in a crime so vile, so incomprehensible, that the effects would ripple through not just the victim's life, but the lives of those connected to the investigation. His fate was now in the hands of a jury. In the eyes of the law, Crumity was now facing a litany of charges: trafficking in individuals, statutory sexual assault, involuntary deviate sexual intercourse, sexual assault, and selling or furnishing alcohol to a minor. He was a man whose web of lies had ensnared not just one, but potentially many other victims. Jasmine's case was only the beginning, and the weight of what he had done hung over him like a dark cloud. Prosecutor. We are here today because of one man's calculated, ruthless actions. Keyshawn Crumity manipulated, trafficked, and abused a young girl. He preyed upon her vulnerability, convinced her that she could trust him, only to trap her in a house of horrors. This case is not just about one victim, it's about stopping a predator before he can hurt anyone else. The trial was an ordeal for Jasmine's family. Each day spent in that courtroom was a reminder of the nightmare they had endured. For them, it was a battle for justice, not just for Jasmine, but for every child who could fall victim to the same fate. Every word spoken, every piece of evidence presented, was a step closer to accountability. But the toll on the family was undeniable. This wasn't just about the law. It was about the emotional scars that would never fully heal. Human trafficking cases are notoriously difficult to prosecute. They involve multiple layers: deception, coercion, manipulation. Victims often feel trapped, and the legal process can be overwhelming. It's not just about proving what happened, it's about understanding the trauma, the psychological manipulation, and the effect it has on the victim's life. In Jasmine's case, the evidence is clear, but we still have to prove that Crumedy acted with intent. This is a battle, and it's far from over. As the case against Crumedy built, the net began to close in on the other suspects. Ronald Smith, arrested in Georgia, faced charges of kidnapping and contributing to the delinquency of a minor. His role in transporting Jasmine across state lines made him complicit in the trafficking operation, but how far did his involvement go? And what about the woman who helped facilitate Jasmine's journey to Washington, D.C.? Was she simply a pawn in Crumedy's game, or was she just as guilty as the rest? Ronald Smith's involvement in the trafficking ring was clear, but whether or not he was merely a facilitator or an active participant was still uncertain. He was charged with kidnapping, an act that carried its own heavy consequences. His arrest was just the beginning. As authorities delved deeper into his connections, they discovered links to other parts of the trafficking network. What they found was chilling. Jasmine's mother. It's been hard. Some days, I don't even know how we're still standing. But we're fighting for Jasmine. For her future. For every other child out there who might be going through something like this. We have to keep fighting, because if we don't, then what's the point? The emotional toll on Jasmine's family was undeniable. Her mother's ongoing battle for justice wasn't just about the trial, it was about ensuring that Jasmine's story was heard, that her pain was acknowledged, and that the system worked to hold these predators accountable. The emotional scars of the case would linger far beyond the courtroom. As the trial neared its conclusion, everyone in the courtroom knew what was at stake. The verdict would determine not just the fate of Keyshawn Crumedy, but the future of those who had been affected by his actions. Jasmine's family sat quietly in the back, waiting for the judgment, their hearts heavy with the weight of the unknown. Would justice prevail? Or would the system fail them once again? This isn't an isolated case. This is happening every day, and it's happening right under our noses. Behind the glow of our screens, children across the world are being manipulated, groomed, and exploited. In the dark corners of the internet, predators are just a click away, preying on the vulnerable. And what makes this reality even more terrifying is how easily these predators can slip past the defenses we've put in place to protect our children. The digital age has opened up a whole new world, one where children can connect with anyone, anywhere. But with this access comes a dangerous side. Predators, like Keyshawn Crumedy, use the anonymity of the internet to mask their true identities, carefully constructing their online personas to appear trustworthy, kind, and understanding. They target young, vulnerable children, using manipulative tactics to gain their trust. Experts. Online grooming is an incredibly subtle process. It starts with small, seemingly harmless conversations. The predator might say things like, "I know what you're going through," or "I can help you with your problems." They give the child attention, make them feel special, and slowly build a bond. By the time the child realizes they're in danger, it's often too late. They've already been manipulated into trusting the predator. Statistics. 1 in 7 children is solicited for sex online every year. Over 60% of child sex trafficking victims are recruited through social media platforms. The average age of online grooming victims is between 12 and 14 years old. These numbers are not just statistics. They represent real lives, real children, like Jasmine. And what's more alarming is how common this is. Every year, millions of children fall victim to online predators. The rise of social media has made it easier for traffickers to access vulnerable children from anywhere in the world. And even worse, the grooming process can take place right under the noses of parents and caregivers, hidden behind the safety of a smartphone or computer screen. Law enforcement. The internet has made it easier for traffickers to target children, but it's also made it harder to catch them. The anonymity of the digital world means predators can hide behind false identities and communicate with children without ever being seen. They can use social media to find vulnerable victims, to build a relationship, and then exploit it. The challenge for us is tracing those interactions and figuring out who's behind them before it's too late. It's easy to believe that our children are safe, that the world is a far-off place. But the reality is that the threat is closer than we think. It's in our homes, in the devices we give our children, in the social media platforms that have become a part of daily life. While we teach our children about stranger danger in the real world, we often forget to teach them about the dangers lurking online. And that's where the predators strike. What's most disturbing about online grooming is how easily predators can gain access to children's private worlds. Through messages, chats, and even voice calls, they offer promises of safety, companionship, and affection, things that children desperately want, especially if they're feeling lonely or misunderstood. The grooming process is insidious, gradual, and often undetected until it's too late. Children who are groomed online often feel a sense of loyalty or even love for their abuser. The predator has worked hard to build trust and manipulate the child into believing that they care about them. By the time the child realizes they are in danger, they've often been psychologically manipulated to believe they can't turn back or ask for help. It's not just the physical abuse, it's the emotional manipulation that makes it so difficult for them to break free. This is the reality of online grooming. It's happening right now, in every corner of the world, in the homes of children who are unknowingly vulnerable. Every day, predators exploit the online world to find new victims, and every day, new children fall prey to their manipulative tactics. It's a cycle that continues to grow, as technology advances and social media platforms become more integrated into our lives. Jasmine's story, though harrowing and painful, is not unique. It's a story that plays out every day, in every corner of the world, and in homes just like the one you live in. The internet, a space that was meant to connect us, is now a playground for predators. For every child who has been manipulated and trafficked, there are countless others who are being targeted right now. The question is, what are we doing to stop it? Now, it's time for action. It's time for all of us to do our part. From parents teaching their children about the dangers of online interactions to lawmakers passing stricter laws against trafficking, each of us has a role in making the digital world a safer place. No one can do it alone, but together, we can protect the most vulnerable among us. In today's world, where everyone is connected, the question we must all ask ourselves is, how do we protect our children from predators hiding behind screens? How do we ensure that the world our children interact with online is safe, and not a breeding ground for those who would harm them? In a space where trust is so easily given and so easily exploited, how do we teach our children to trust wisely, to understand the dangers that might lurk in the seemingly innocent messages they receive? Jasmine's mother. I never thought it would happen to us. You hear about things like this, but you never think it'll happen to your own child. I don't want any other parent to go through what we've gone through. No child should have to live in fear. We have to protect them. We have to teach them, and we have to listen. This isn't just a story about one victim. This is a call to action for all of us. It's a call to look closely at the world our children are growing up in. To understand that online predators are not just lurking in the shadows, they are actively targeting the most vulnerable. The fight against online grooming and human trafficking starts with awareness. It starts with conversations at home, in schools, and in communities. It starts with each of us standing up to say that we will not allow this to continue. That we will protect our children, no matter the cost. It's never too late to take a stand. If we work together, we can change the future. We can protect our children from those who would harm them. And we can ensure that no more victims fall through the cracks.
Welcome to Shocking True Crime. Thanks to all our viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay with us for daily updates on the most shocking true crime stories. Don't forget to subscribe.